Good evening, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight for the Designers Roundtable. My name is Karen Romano. I am the current president of the Book Industry Guild of New York. As many of you know, October is usually the month when we hold the New York Book Show, which is a celebration of the printed book, so design, production, and manufacturing. And although the 34th annual book show is on hold for the moment, the creative process and energy in our community really continues unabashed. So we are here tonight to celebrate that and to get a better understanding of what the design process looks and feels like in a virtual environment. With that in mind, I am delighted to be able to introduce our esteemed moderator, J.D. Biersdorfer. Jude Biersdorfer is the production editor for the print edition of the New York Times Book Review and has previously worked in production departments at the New York Times Magazine, T Magazine, and Rolling Stone. She also writes the monthly Tech Tip column for the business section of the Times, as well as the Book Review's applied reading column on ebooks and literary apps. Outside the Times, Ms. Biersdorfer is the author or co-author of 8 books on consumer technology topics and co-hosts the independent Pop Tech Jam podcast. So who better to kick off the evening? And Jude, I thank you, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Karen, for that introduction, and also to Richard here manning the tech. I'm going to introduce our panelists here tonight, and we're just going to go right into it because I know everyone out in the audience will probably have some questions and also want to hear more of them than me. So I'll just start the introductions here. In no particular order, Catherine Casolino is a principal and creative director of Casalino Design Inc., an independent design company in New York City focusing on book design, print, and branding. Casolino Design Inc.'s clients include Penguin Random House, A&E Networks, Simon & Schuster, IBM, HarperCollins, and The New York Times. Catherine has been working as an art director and a designer in New York since 2003. Prior to opening Casalino Design in 2016, she worked in-house at Grand Central Publishing, Random House, and Simon & Schuster, and she began her career at Rodrigo Corral Design. So welcome, Catherine.
Thank you.
And next up, Dominique Jones. Dominique was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. She is a junior designer at Dutton, a division of Penguin Random House. And she's also the founder of Black Book Designers, a community for Black and Brown designers to connect, promote, and share their experiences within the publishing industry. And next we have Luke Bird, who is up very late, because I believe you are in the UK there, right, Luke?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Luke is a designer and art director from the United Kingdom who specializes in book design, typography, and limited edition packaging for the publishing and music industries. He designs a wide array of publishing, can't read my own writing. He designs for a wide array of publishing houses from all over the world, including Penguin, Vintage, eBay, Faber & Faber, Simon & Schuster, Little Brown, Granada, Fourth Estate, Melville House, Orion, Hardy Grant, and lots more. He has been shortlisted 9 times for the Academy of British Cover Design Awards, winning in 2019 for the cover of Sayaka Murata's Convenience Store Women. So anyway, thank you to all the panelists for joining us here tonight. Hope everyone is in the mood to talk about what it's like to be a creative visual professional here in this very kind of bizarre time. We've been calling it the Pansanity. But let's start there. Now, when the world began to lock down across, I guess it was probably a little bit earlier in the UK and then here in the US in March, the world begins to lock down. What was the biggest adjustment that you personally had to make in the way that you work as a book designer, whether creatively or physically, or just what was the thing that stood out to you the most? And anyone can jump in and go first.
I think, oh, go ahead, Dominique.
I was just going to say, for me, it was basically a lot of the meetings. It was kind of like this whole electronic virtual meetings, and it was hard to get things structured in a way, and how to present things, who's going to talk, making sure everyone's on mute. And it was a lot of dysfunctional, issues, but everything else for me, when it comes to routing things and keeping things in motion, it was perfectly fine. but also noticing when it came down to the production, that's became very difficult with like colors, and you can't really, CMYK versus RGB is totally different, and not having the printers at home and scanning things. So that was for me a difficult part. So.
Catherine?
Yeah, my experience didn't change that much because I've been running my own studio for the past 4 years. What I noticed was that I was missing out on the stuff in New York City that kind of fuels my creativity. And it was just little things like just walking around the neighborhood and looking at things and meeting up with friends who are also freelancers or other artists. So that was really hard in that aspect, where I didn't have kind of that outside fuel of the city, which I, thrive on.
I'm pretty much exactly the same, Catherine. I mean, I've worked from home for a studio at home for about 3 or 4 years, but I'm about 2 hours outside the capital, London. But I rely so heavily. I suppose I didn't realize how heavily I rely on London as that like publishing and creative hub. So I used to go once a week at least, and I also I tend to try and visit an independent bookshop or a bookshop of some kind, at least a couple of times a month. And I really it was just great. I mean, everything obviously closed, didn't it? Everything. So yeah, I really missed that actually as well.
That's a good point too, Luke, because like there's a local bookstore that I walk by almost every day, and for months it was the same things in the windows. So it was like, oh, I'm always walking by looking to see what is coming out and new projects and who's working on what, and I was deprived of that. And every day it was the same. So for months it was the same book in the window, and that was really kind of surprising. You don't realize how much you're taking in just on your daily routine.
Yeah, that whole frozen in time. I think everyone like left the March page on their calendars too for a lot of. But and I think Dominique touched on this a little bit in the opening because of Designer's Day. In addition to walking around and looking at stuff and then figuring out your meetings and I guess remote workflow, it can involve everything from presentations to production to mentoring to networking. I mean, there's so much that goes on in the design process. Have you been able at this point in the pandemic, 8-9 months down the road, to satisfactorily replicate most of those experiences in the remote environment, or is there one that just doesn't work, on a flat screen?
I could jump. I've found certainly, like, obviously I work on book covers a lot, but I also work on fully integrated books, so kind of cookbooks and lifestyle books. And I find that face-to-face meetings for those books are much more important. They're huge jobs with big teams, and I find that getting in front of people is really quite important for that. And I've been working with Fortnum and Mason, which is a really old traditional food store here in the UK, and they're doing an amazing cookbook at the moment. But we have to share screen to get anything approved, and the process takes so much longer. I mean, the book's been delayed anyway because everything's been delayed. But I mean, honestly, it's probably 6 months work of Zooms where it probably would have only been a few short meetings. So it really has slowed down a lot of processes, I think.
I think you also don't know what's going to be a problem until it pops up. Like Dominique was saying, like just kind of trying to figure out meetings and things like that. Like I had one project I was working on where we were trying to get the color right, and I had a Pantone process book, which is, and the printer had a Pantone process book, but the client didn't. So we were, I was working with Puritan printers, and we were just trying to triangulate color based on, if this is this and this is what we printed in the proof, then the client can see that this is green and this is more blue. So just really trying to figure out those things as they arose, and realizing we didn't have the resources to, be all in the same place.
Yeah, the color stuff too came to mind, because at the Times we have a whole department that actually tones and crops all of the photos for newsprint, and it's not like people were dragging home a large format Canon proofer to be able to proof out their stuff and make sure it's gonna be accurate in the paper. But I think Catherine, both you and Dominic touched on this too, just the physical stuff of color, and nobody's really got an apartment that's painted in Munsell gray that I know of, or just a light box, a neutral space to look at your color, to keep your swatches, and just like these little things that we take for granted. So Catherine, you mentioned trying to triangulate between printers and people having different versions of the books. Did you find any other solutions among your three individual experiences for dealing specifically with color, because it is such a vital part of getting it right?
Yeah, I mean, that one was just a specific example, and we were proofing things more so that we could see, ink on paper, and making sure that we all had copies of the exact same proof, which sometimes in the publishing houses you would do it, but usually you're hoping that people have access to, I happen to have a process Pantone book. Like we happen to have all those things, and the printer obviously had them. So, trying to think if there was any other examples. It just like, as they come up, you're like, well, how are we going to look at this, or see how it's going to live in reality? Oh, I've been doing a lot of renderings of books, of covers. Like I will Photoshop them onto a cover into, an open book, so they can see how it will look as a layout, as opposed to just, usually you send clients things and they're printing them out and showing them in a meeting at a table. And they're not able to do that. Everything's on the screen. So they may not know that the type looks large, or so when you put it on a book in Photoshop, it looks, at least they get a little bit more of a sense of what it's going to feel like as a package.
The color thing, especially the Pantone thing, has been an absolute nightmare for me this year. That's probably been the hardest thing, because I tend to try and print with them a lot, which production departments all hate me, because I love to use a Pantone and they're really expensive. But yeah, I guess they're really expensive things, swatch books, aren't they? I mean, the cheapest process swatch book's going to cost you like £100, which I guess is what, $150, $160. I don't know how much it is over there for a swatch book, but they're expensive. So if there's a team of 5 people working on a book, you can guarantee that maybe only one of that 5 has got a Pantone book at home. And I made the mistake of going on Pantone's website and trying to send people like an RGB approximation of it, because it's closer than CMYK in some instances, but it's just never right, is it? Dominic, you mentioned it before, the RGB thing is just such a it's just such a red herring. It can look so different.
Yeah, it does. Totally does. I'm lucky enough to even have a Pantone chip book here in my art director too, and we were like, I chose out a couple of options that I thought would be good, and he did the same, and we're just like, oh, what about this one? That's on what page is that? And like going back and forth, and it's like, this could be so much easier if we were in person, but
Yeah, well, and along with the colors, are you all doing your own tech support too for monitor like attempts at calibration, or even just troubleshooting issues with the computers when they decide to act up? Or do you have like support resources that you can use there?
Google.
Yeah, exactly.
Support.apple.com. Yeah, and Dominique, you're with Dutton. Was there infrastructure within the office to kind of help with the transition to remote? If you weren't like in your own studio, sort of working independently, did you have an infrastructure there that was put out to all the staff when they said, okay, we're all going to work from home now?
Yeah, they let us know. Like we kind of all, like as a team, all talked about it and was like, maybe this might be a little longer than expected. So we kind of like prepared ourselves, and everyone before we like left the office made sure like who has a computer at home, who doesn't, who has a laptop at least, and made sure everyone was sort of prepared. So I was lucky enough to even have a computer at home, which is good, and it's touchscreen, so I like it much better than the Apple. But with everything going on, it's probably best to just use an Apple instead of a Windows. I'm more of a Windows person. But the whole team and Penguin itself was they made things less stressful, as chaotic as the world made it seem. And so it was a little easy to transition from home. So I don't know if everyone else experienced it. I mean, you guys work home and you guys have your own studio, so it's probably way much different than, panicking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, from my experience, like I worked at Penguin Random House or when it was just Random House. And I felt like they were always really organized. So you were in a good spot when the pandemic hit. I don't know if all the houses were the same amount of organized, and nobody expected it to last as long. Like what you said, like people were kind of thinking, oh, I'll be home for a week or so or whatever. I mean, even just with tech, I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll buy a new computer in the next couple months, or I'm going to get a, iPad Pro or whatever. Like all of that kind of goes out the window. And at one point, my 4-year-old broke my stylus because he thought it was a regular pen. Like I have a Wacom. And I was like, oh my God, I can't just go to a store and buy a new one. I have to order it online and wait for it. So, it's those kind of things that were just affecting everybody during pandemic. Thank goodness for ordering stuff on the internet, but yeah, and Googling things and all of that when you kind of run into problems. But luckily, like I was set up mostly. I'm always pretty good about having like extra printer cartridges and things like that. So,
Yeah, because I think that was another aspect too. Nobody expected, I think, really the courier services, the FedEx, UPS, DHL, all of them to get overloaded and things taking longer to get just by delivery. It's another curveball thrown at us. But from your individual perspectives, given that some of you work independently and some with houses, what's the biggest way that the pandemic has affected the book industry itself? Have you seen any things that just really stood out to you about things being done differently, just aside from countless delayed titles and the sort of attempts to get back on schedule?
I think there have been, this is a crazy thing to say, but I think that like there may be some positives to take from the fact that, at least in the UK, the book industry has been in pretty good health this year. Lots of industries have really suffered. The book industry in the UK hasn't suffered quite as badly. And I think it's a positive that evidently when people have got a lot of time on their hands, they kind of, they want to pick up a novel again. And I think that's obviously it's been affected in so many bad ways, but I think that maybe we can take a positive in that people might, people who haven't picked up books for years might have found the time to do that again and fallen back in love with the industry. I hope so. That would be great.
Okay, so the plague is good for business in the book industry. Dominique, Catherine, you guys have any thoughts on that?
For me, I would think that, I'm not sure about the numbers, but with like ebooks versus like the hardcover, probably there seems to probably be an increase on people buying ebooks and listening to more of audibles. For me, I actually fell in love with audibles for the very first time compared to reading a physical book. I do miss the physical book and having it in my hand and stuff, but I became more of an audible person now because of the pandemic. Like I don't have time to physically sit down and read compared to like work and like trying to have a life outside of work too at home. And so audibles is just the perfect thing for me.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot more audiobooks too because I can work, or if I'm doing something that's not conceptual, like Photoshop work or retouching or just like adding corrections, I can listen to something. So I definitely listen to a lot more audiobooks. And then I would say the cookbook industry has been like, I feel like I've gotten more cookbooks because everyone's like making their own sourdough and all that stuff. And I feel like there's this resurgence of kind of crafty things because people are home, everybody's sewing. Like I took out my sewing machine for the first time in ages because I had to make a mask. So like you have a lot of that, and a lot of friends of mine are like, oh, I'm starting to do ceramics again, or drawing or coloring. Like I just feel like there's a lot of the craft movement coming back, and so I think those books are doing well. And I feel like I've still been working on a lot of cookbooks where other things, like I did a travel book prior to the pandemic. And then I was like, I can't even share this because no one's traveling. It's gonna make people feel bad. So, I think there's some categories that are coming up and others that are decreasing a bit.
Yeah, I think just also from looking around the times too, we invented this section called At Home, which is sort of about entertaining yourself at home. And there's a lot of focus on self-sufficiency and doing stuff, beyond the bread baking and the sourdough starter. But more sewing and more crafts and more stuff to keep the kids busy, which I think is probably even more needed than ever now. Yeah. So let's circle back around to some design specific questions, because there is so much attention for, there's so much demand for the reader's attention these days, in addition to sort of balancing all of this and whether they're working from home or having to go in, and you're designing books in this environment. And because social media is such a big part of it too, when ad budgets, or they can't have big book parties and things, and maybe social media is doing more of the PR work just to get the word out. Has that changed the way you design a book, knowing that your cover could pop up anywhere from like an Instagram story to a Twitter thumbnail? And does that affect your design process at all, having to factor in this digital world? And Luke, you got one there?
No, I think it definitely has, for me anyway. I mean, I kind of, I don't know, I'm not particularly comfortable with social media, in all honesty. Like, it's an awful thing to say, but I kind of use Instagram because it gets me work, which is kind of awful, but it's true. I mean, I often see screenshots of my work from my Instagram feed on briefs that publishers have sent me. So I kind of know that they're looking at that and therefore seeing my work, which is great. And the other thing is that I've seen, and I was saying this to Catherine and Dominique when we first had a chat the other week, but I've seen that the term Instagrammable featured on briefs. So publishers are wanting books to feel like they look, feel like they're in a sort of idyllic Instagram lifestyle shot, if that makes sense. So they want it to look cool alongside a flat white and a cactus and all of that business. So I think it's definitely having a huge impact, but I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, I mean, I think Instagram kind of has become the biggest platform, at least for the visual stuff. And it's like you said, everybody's doing kind of the Instagrammable stuff. And I think it's important to keep that in mind. Like, does it read at a small size? I'm designing some books for ebook, audiobook publisher where you're seeing it in the app. So like when I'm designing for that company, I'm always looking at things very tiny, and I am, superimposing them into the app and looking at them on my phone. I think it's really important to understand where the book cover is going to live. And that it does work in both places. Like, you want it to be beautiful in the bookstore window, and you want it to be beautiful on Instagram. And how can you, split that difference and really make it pop in both worlds?
Dominique, any thoughts or?
No, you guys both said I think words out my mouth, honestly. It really turns in perspective and how you really look at things. Like, sometimes I'll look at something on the computer and then look at it on my email and be like, on the phone, and be like, whoa, that looks very small. And I'm like, okay, maybe I should adjust it here. And so I like that it gives you that different perspective. So
it also sometimes looks better on a retina screen. I don't know if you find that. Like, I'm sometimes working on my laptop or my big monitor, and then I look at a sent email on my iPhone, and the covers are really popping, and I'm like, whoa, that looks so cool. But I mean, it's fake. It's not. It's kind of not real. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, and that goes back to Dominique's comment about RGB too. Like, I was working on something where the art was coming from an online news source. Like, they had been making images to live online, and then when we started printing them, they were like, the color is not right. It's like, well, I can't make it that neon blue unless we use a Pantone or something. So yeah, you can kind of give it a little more life too when you put it on Instagram, and just and simulating things like foil and making it look really cool. Like, you have a lot more control, which is nice. Like, in the bookstore, if the lighting is crappy, you can't fix that. So,
yeah. I imagine just getting press proofs or press checks, or I don't know how many of y'all would go on a physical press check, but are you reliant on getting things sent, the first proofs and things now more than ever to see how your things have turned out?
Yeah, I mean, I used to go on press all the time. I think that just it cuts out the middleman. You're actually on the press with the press person who knows how to calibrate the color and all that stuff, especially if you're doing effects or a touch plate or foil. You really get to see it in real time. Hopefully most people are now building time in the schedule to send those to you and hold the presses or give you press proofs or something that you can make better decisions. But I think that's going to be extremely hard for covers with a lot of effects. Like you just don't know until it's on the paper and on the printing press sometimes. So, you know, you can simulate it. We have comp houses that do that, but it's not always how it's going to look when it's printed on the press.
Yeah, I imagine, you know, also getting feedback from peers and stuff too has been more of a challenge, just if you're not naturally seeing somebody in the office. And Dominique, I know you have your group, the Black Book Designers Group. Have you been able to sort of do critiques and also make up for some of the loss of social interaction that one would get from an office with the group here in these remote times?
I have. I would say the upside for that too is after starting it, well, before, it was just me as the only Black designer, and I would look around and don't see as many faces like myself. And so I was like, I can't be the only one out of all the publishing houses. And so when I started it, it was like all these other people coming in and like, hey, I work at Penguin too. I'm like, I've never seen you. And like, it just made me so happy. And I like met so many people. So that's like the upside to like, I guess starting an Instagram account in like this community within the whole pandemic, but it's sad we can't see each other. Well, yet, so.
Yeah, but to have this and also to not be worried by geographic boundaries too. If, you know,
Yeah.
oh, we can all just meet in the Zoom room and it doesn't matter where you're
Right.
working from.
Hopefully soon I'll like gather everyone for like a Zoom meeting or so. I mean, it's just me really controlling the account at the moment. So I'm trying to figure things out with like work, life, and then also the page as well. But hopefully soon, I'm hoping to have a small event soon. So I guess follow the page to be on the lookout and see if anything's posted.
Yeah.
It's great. You're featuring really good people. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, you know, and I guess this is a saying on the internet now, we've moved from work from home, which for some people had just been how they did it, but now it's almost live at work to where we're seeing mission creep and our hours are not what they used to be. And I know, Luke, you have time zones mixed in there as well if you're doing stuff over here. Do you each have a tip for anyone about how you structure your day to avoid exhausting, like you're creating and just burning out, like, you know, to keep your creativity fresh and just how to go through it even when you've got like childcare issues or things happening that have taken you out of the routine of what you did before the pandemic hit?
Yeah, I think it's like you really, I mean, you have to kind of create your own boundaries. And pre-pandemic, that was easier. You know, for me, I would be at my desk at 9 a.m. with my specific coffee mug. And, you know, I have my little things that I would do every day. I would, you know, maybe 3 times a week, I'd take a lunch with somebody or a coffee just to add structure to my day. I would go work out. You know, you don't have all that now. It's like the outside is not as, it's not as structured. But I think still saying to yourself, like, I'm going to work on this in the morning, I'm going to work on this in the afternoon. I think that helps. You have to kind of set up some kind of structure for yourself. And like, maybe you sit down and you're like, this afternoon, I'm going to design this cover, and it doesn't work, but that's okay. At least you showed up and you started to do that work. And you said, you know, the afternoons are the times that I do creative work and the mornings are the times I respond to emails or whatever that is.
I'm the same with that. Like so it took me a couple of years to realize it when I first kind of went out on my own, but I'm super productive in the mornings. So I sometimes start work at like 6 a.m., which sounds stupid, I know, but I don't know. I just find that I'm kind of buzzing in the morning and I'm ready for it. But even by like, I struggle to think of a cover I've done that I've been really proud of, like that I've done after midday. So I tend to structure my work now where I tend to try and be creative in the mornings, and then kind of do admin or reading, especially in the afternoons. But really, quite frankly, because I've worked from home already for 3 years, the pandemic hasn't affected that too much. I guess it's more what Catherine says about that kind of, you know, creativity is kind of fueled a lot, I think, by being around other designers and other culture. And I think if you don't have that, it kind of doesn't matter whether you work at home or not. It does affect you greatly.
I agree. I think building a structure really does help. because before I felt like I was like all over the place. And then now, like, I'm at home, I'm like, okay, I can wake up an hour before I have to work. I don't have to rush being on a train with so many people.
Yeah.
I like have that extra sleep, and I'm like, I'm wide awake rather than just like half sleep on a train. And so I like that new structure what the pandemic has brought. And just even splitting my time up, like, okay, the mornings I will answer emails, I would do this and that, and in the afternoon I focus on this. And I'm like slowly prioritizing my time more than being like, okay, now I have to fit in time. It's gonna take me X amount of time to be home, take the train, take the bus. It's like, oh, that's eliminated. Now I have more time for myself. So
Yeah, and much less time spent complaining about the MTA too. I mean, that was my
yeah.
big thing
Or
about
like
the,
running for a train.
yeah. Yeah. Now, Catherine, looking at all of you who mentioned missing the visual stimulation of, you know, when you do have to go out and seeing things and bookstore windows and whatnot. And things kind of got a little better over the summer, and now it seems like maybe we're going the other direction. But have you found a substitute for that sort of visual stimulation that you used to get from stores? Anything, you know, like watching YouTube, or just is there anything that's been able to kind of pop your creativity that you used to get just from walking around?
Yeah, I found I've been just doing a lot of talking to people that I maybe knew by name or didn't know, like through Instagram. I've been doing a lot of Zoom meetings with people, which has been really cool. And I feel like a lot of people are putting more content out like that, like a class that I may have gone to see or a talk I may have gone to, like people are putting it out. You know, like I was watching Adobe Max today. There was a advertising agency called Havas who was just like, they did an open house where they had every department talk about how their advertising agency works. So I've just kind of been like, whatever's online that I can grab, I do that. And then also like trying to appreciate the things that I do have, like I have a lot of beautiful art books and things like that. So looking through and looking through the things I already have in my collection and saying, I haven't looked at this typography book in a while. Maybe I'll sit down and take the time, as opposed to like going and buying something new, which I typically would do. But I miss the museums. There's nothing like seeing a painting in real life, like that you can't substitute some of those things. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I even tried like virtual museum galleries, and I was like, this is not it. I'm sorry. Like, I
Yeah.
miss being there and taking a photo rather than looking virtually. But yeah, I do miss the museums. I can say that for sure. But it surprisingly, it made me, like, I agree, it made me, Catherine, open up old books that I have that I'm just like sitting there collecting dust, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about this. And now I have like a whole stack of like inspirational books to like always go back and look at when I know it's here, but not being home sometimes in your day to day, you just search the internet to see what's inspiration or watch Netflix or something. So
Right. Yeah, I think you rely on the internet a lot, like, Pinterest and stuff like that. And I'm like, my husband is also in the book design world. And so a lot of the times now, because he's working from home also, we're both like, oh, do you have a book about, modernism or whatever it is? And we will have one, and then you can look at it and appreciate it. And before I would just like Google it, even though I have stuff in my library. So yeah, it's nice to get back to the physical stuff that we have surrounding us,
Yeah, and I know things in the UK are in various tiers of lockdown again, and I know New York is making noise, and it sounds like this second or third wave, I've even lost track, could be coming around. Knowing that we sort of went through this in the spring, have you made any preparations for having to go back into sort of a more isolated? Well, I know we got out for a little bit this summer, and yay, let's take the ferry, and the Met was open. I think starting in August, but is there anything that you're doing to prepare, even like stocking up on your Pantone books and toner cartridges?
I'm the biggest idiot in the world, because having worked from home for 3 years, in July this year, I decided this would be a good year to get a little studio outside the house.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm paying rent on a place that I'm pretty sure is going to be closed from like next week or the week after. So I've got kind of three months out of my, but I haven't been because everything's been in lockdown, and I probably won't go. So yeah, that was a bit of an error, probably, to be totally honest with you.
Dominique, Catherine, anything you're planning for the next wave, or you're just gonna keep on keeping on?
I've been racking up on a lot of book orders. So a lot of Amazon ordering of like books I don't have, or just supplies, like trying to go to like Michael's or Blick Art Store while it's open and just like supply as much as possible before like things really shut down again. So
Yeah, I think, I have a lot of stuff. I've been in the industry a long time, so it's like, I feel like I do have a lot of like my art books. I think it's mostly like organizing things now, and so that I know where things are. Like, if I need that Pantone process book, where is it? Just making sure that my studio is set up and that I have all those things, like, paper and printer cartridges, things like that. I might go like, maybe get a new computer or something like that before, just because I feel like if my computer shuts down or breaks down, like I can't get it repaired. The Apple Store, you have to make an appointment weeks in advance and things like that. I think it's going to be a little bit tougher, but luckily with New York, a lot of stuff has been open for like curbside pickup and things like that. So I'm hopeful that we'll stay safe and keep the numbers down in the city, because it's been nice to see all these places open up again. Like my local bookstore, you can actually go inside now, and that's like just a revelation. So
Yeah, and some of the outdoor dining is actually in New York. I can't speak for the UK, but in New York, which kind of wants to be Paris, I guess, with the heaters and the nice little stalls outside, is actually kind of a nice change. But that when because maybe we have a little more time, fewer times on the train, fewer meetings, don't have to go to the studio. Has anyone picked up any extra skills just in this extra time? Like you mentioned Adobe Max, Catherine, where you have been inspired or had the time to do anything that you couldn't do when you were on the regular schedule?
yeah, and I think I've been doing a lot of trying to do positive things, because the news cycle is just so stressful at this point, between just everything that's been going on has just been a lot, and I tend to check the news a couple times a day, and I'm like, okay, I have to just check it in the morning and take a break. So I've been doing master classes too, which I really, really highly recommend, and those are not related to design. I've been doing stuff on like creativity and story writing and just things that I'm interested in a cursory sense. The Adobe Max is really interesting, just because they go over like, new programs. I've been using Photoshop for 20 years, but like, it's always fun to see the new stuff that's coming out and, what new improvements they've made. So yeah, listen, it's always about learning for me. Like, I always want to be learning stuff that's new. And because I can't go to the Type Directors Club or AIGA talks, like I'm having to find it in other places. And luckily there's a lot out there right now.
yeah, same for me. I've been actually joining a lot of photography classes too, even though it's weird to shoot during a pandemic. But it's really like changed my perspectives in so many ways, and like helped me look at book covers differently in some like different ways with colors and like overlapping things, and just being experimental more than I used to. So taking classes online, now that it's virtual, it has been such a benefit.
From a totally artistic point of view, because I've had a little bit more time, I've been trying to kind of push myself to create more things by hand, rather than just, it's so tempting sometimes when you've got a deadline to just kind of draw something really quickly on Illustrator or on Photoshop or get the graphics tablet out. But actually sometimes I find that if you take the time to create something 3D and shoot it, or do something by hand, or get the paints out that you haven't had out the cupboard for 10 years, like I think it can really add a depth visually to a cover. So I've been trying to fill what extra time I have had by doing that kind of thing, and I guess like the other guys, I've just been kind of soaking in culture where I can, but I need to look into masterclasses and things like that. They look like great resources, so I certainly intend to keep doing that.
Yes, so these are some positive things that have come out of the pandemic. We're all having to turn inward a little more. Is there anything about virtual workflows that you would like to see continue after everything gets back to normal, or what passes for normal? Is there anything that was kind of, oh, we could be doing it this way? that would improve a like a hybrid workflow kind of thing?
I would say probably working from home. Like, I like being home and I love being around my family. And I feel like I've had so much more time during this pandemic to be with my family, so much more than like work, come home, go to sleep, eat dinner in the same rotation. And having different workflows too has been difficult. But now that everyone's home, it's more like, okay, we spend more time together. And I would hope that once things open back up, we at least have like 2 days at home and, 3 days coming in and going on meetings. So that way it's a little more flexible with work life. And I think it'll be great for even like people who have kids, you can structure them going to school and being home. And, I mean, I don't have kids, so I can't really speak for that. So, but I think it seems much of a benefit to have that flexibility.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And I think that, from everything from, online learning to work from home, you use your time when you see fit. And I think that that was a big struggle for me working within companies sometimes where my day was pre-structured for me. And like, Luke said that he's a 6 a.m. person. I am not a 6 a.m. person. I am a night person. So, the early bird versus the owl, like, the workday is set up as a one size fits all. And, if I feel most productive from 10 to 10, I can do that. So I think that's been a huge benefit. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, the virtual workflow too. I know it's impacted not only how you work, but your relationships with authors and publishers, and having to do virtual and looking at things. Has this changed, like in the way they're accepting materials, lower, higher quality, different? Some are maybe more tech challenged, and it's more of a lift to get them there. Have you seen any change that way due to the virtual workflow?
I'm not sure I've really noticed that personally per se, but sometimes if I don't know, I guess it makes sense really that things could get it. If say you're in a Zoom meeting and everyone's getting a bit tight, because the Zoom meetings can go on and on and on. I guess it's perfectly plausible that someone could kind of get a bit fed up and approve something that they don't love because they just want to get off the Zoom meeting and get back to their lives. I can totally see why that would happen. I mean, I have no experience of it, hopefully, so far, but, there's no reason why it wouldn't be happening, I suppose.
I guess screen fatigue is real.
Yeah.
I think like seeing everything at once is always like when you present in person, typically at the publishing houses, you put all the covers out on the table, maybe they're wrapped on books, maybe they're cut to the right size, but people can see it physically and eliminate things very quickly by just picking it up and moving it. On the screen, you can't do that. So it's like trying to figure out ways to present stuff where I've been kind of doing a workflow where I show each choice and then I have a page that has the 6 choices on it so they can look at them all together and compare and contrast. So things like that, just kind of figuring out how the virtual workflow, works and not showing too many choices. I think that people get fatigued with seeing too many choices, especially if they're not seeing them side by side. So that's kind of been a thing that I've been navigating a little bit with certain clients. But now you can get everybody in the room. So, if the author is somewhere else and the agent somewhere else, you can get them all on Zoom, and most people are getting more familiar with it. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility to say like, let's all get on a Zoom call. Whereas before, I don't feel like that was happening a lot pre-pandemic. It was happening more with my independent clients, but not with the publishing houses.
Yeah, just the fact that you sort of had to recreate the presentation, going from a very physical way to figure out how to map that to a virtual, like the unveiling or whatever. Was that a sort of trial and error for you? Did you kind of have a vision of how that would work, just given what you could do with presentation software?
Yeah, I think, and also, my husband, who's also a designer, we kind of were saying, oh, the meetings are taking too long. Like, what are you doing? And asking other people that we knew in the design industry, like, how are you showing your covers? Like, you know, in New York, it's a small community and a lot of us know each other and have worked together over the years. So we're all like asking each other, how are you showing to your publisher and how long are your meetings taking? And, you know, trying to problem solve it together. So yeah, I think it was like collaborative, you know, everybody's kind of going through the same stressful problem solving. So.
Funny you mention like covers meetings and design meetings in-house, Catherine, because I often found when I worked in-house that the covers meeting was kind of a strange room in that some people felt confident enough to speak about how they felt about a cover, honestly, and some people kind of didn't want to hurt designers' feelings or you know what I mean, didn't quite feel confident to say their bit. So I haven't experienced this because I'm not in online covers meetings, but I wonder whether it's changed the way that people speak up and the way that people approve things. Are people more likely to speak up if they don't like something, perhaps? So, you know, I guess it's possible.
Dominique, have you seen any of this from your work at Dutton there?
For us, we actually, when we were in the office, we would actually show our work on like a presentation. So doing that through like PDF, it was pretty much a normal thing. So it wasn't much of a change when it came to presenting. So yeah, I mean, it was pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're just a little bit farther away.
Yeah, farther away, yeah, and on little tiny screens.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, I think this pandemic's made a lot of people wish they really had the big 5K monitor for all of this. It looks like we're about quarter after here, which I know we wanted to get some questions from the audience here. Those were pretty much all of my questions, and thank you so much for indulging me on my own nosiness about the process. Because as a production person too, you know, I'm usually on the caboose of the thing, and like, you know, and so, you know, then I get to see the lovely finished work that I then send to press. But we have a few questions here, so I will just throw them out to the team here. How has social activism changed your creative process inside your company and also your own internal process? Clearly, it's been a very big year for social activism. So anyone want to kick off here?
I think it's about being mindful of, you know, if you're collaborating with people, who are you recommending? Who are you hiring? Even when, you know, I run a small studio, so, you know, I'm not hiring people on a daily basis, but oftentimes people reach out to me and say, you know, can you take on this project? And I can't, and who am I recommending? You know, thinking about diversity within the book industry and what we can do to make a difference and all of that. I think that's really important, highlighting projects I've worked on that I think are important about social activism. You know, there's a lot of work to be done, and publishing doesn't have enough diversity, and there's not, you know, it's a insular world sometimes, and I think there needs to be a lot more focus on it. And I'm happy to see a lot more projects coming out that talk about social activism. So that's been kind of a positive. But
yeah, I've seen a lot of that. I've seen a lot of companies, you know, wanting to take that step forward and being more diverse and being more inclusive and stuff, and which is great. But I just really hope that it won't be like a trend that just winds up dying down and going back to what it used to be or what it already is. But I do love it to see new faces being shown in the community and recommended as freelancers and stuff like that. So that's the upside that I really adore about it. And also seeing like an increase in books as well, and like authors who had written books so long ago about like social activism, and then all of a sudden it's like on the rise of bestsellers, and it's been out for so long. And it's great people are reading it, you know, and buying these books and being willing to unlearn and relearn new things. So yeah, hopefully it just doesn't seem as though it's a trend and dies down. So that's my only hope.
It's exactly the same here in the UK. I mean, it's a hot topic at the moment, rightly so, and I think it's amazing that people are talking about it and kind of, you know, realizing that there definitely isn't enough diversity in the UK publishing industry. But as you say, Dominique, you know, it's great that people are talking about it, but kind of talking is only the first step. And until there's kind of tangible action by the houses and by the education ministers, that's kind of what we need to see now, I think, as well as, people like yourself doing amazing work in promoting the design that's already out there, I think.
And I think there's a lot of, people are kind of on autopilot sometimes. Like, when I was an art director in house, you have a list of books, you have a lot of books that you're working on, and you're thinking, who am I going to get to work on this? And a lot of times people go to the people that they've worked with previously. And that's a mistake, because I think that there are a lot of people out there, and just taking that pause to say, hey, maybe I can hire someone who hasn't worked on books before, or maybe I can hire somebody who I wouldn't necessarily think of for this book. Like, as a woman in the industry, I get a lot of women's fiction. Like, why am I not getting a book about baseball? So I think it's just thinking about it in a very mindful way if you're giving out projects. And then if you are in the position to hire other people, who can you help to bring up into the industry? Whether it's an illustrator, a photographer, somebody who hasn't done books before. Like, it's going to take a little more work, and you have to be willing to put in that effort. Like, you're going to have to explain to somebody like how a book is designed, or that if they're a photographer, that you need them to leave space for you to put the title on the book. But that's a small amount of responsibility that people who are in positions of power and hiring it's part of your job. It's not just about getting your list done, but it's about expanding the industry. So I think it's really important work.
Yes. All right. Another question here, and thank you for all of those answers. We have another question. As the supply chain has smoothed out, have you all been able to see copies of the finished books that you've worked on?
Not as much here, I have to say.
Yeah.
Normally, I think I'm supposed to get, in my contract, It says they're supposed to send me 2 copies.
Mm-hmm.
I get about 50% normally, and I would say it's down to about 30%, so definitely less.
For me, I haven't even seen the first book that got officially printed this year, and it was like heartbreaking. I was like, I want to see it in person. So I would like rush to Barnes and Nobles to see and I finally saw it. So it was like, that made me happy that Barnes and Nobles was open and I could actually see it. So I just wish they would actually mail it to my house. Would be nice. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I've had a few people send me stuff, but I've also seen things in like bookstore windows or that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have another question here asking, do you all have a recent design that you would want to show off here or talk about real quick, just as an example of what you've been doing during the pandemic? And that might be kind of an on the spot question, or you can just talk about a book if we don't have any visuals to hold up. Is there anything, that you've been working on now that you could talk about?
Yeah, I just got a book today. It showed up today. But it's about Spectrum is an online news source for autism research. And so I did their annual publication. So that was kind of cool. And this was all like, we digitally printed it and it was done over the internet. So, so that was kind of cool to see the final product. And it's that I finished. And that was a project that I started earlier in the year and then kind of got put on hold. So that was fun to complete. I'm always doing covers. I have a couple cookbooks in the works right now. So my work is all over the place.
Shall I do a really quick share screen to show you something, or would that be complicated?
I'm fine with that. Sure. If you take the aircraft here.
Okay. Oh no, I'm not allowed apparently.
Oh yeah, I don't think I've
got a dialogue saying that. No, I don't think I've got a copy of it here. No, I worked on an amazing, like, I'm a real foodie. Like, food is kind of my biggest passion, really, outside of design. And I worked on a cookbook this year with a UK food writer called Tim Hayward, just about, like, he owns an amazing bakery in Cambridge, which is a beautiful city in England. And we worked on one of his cookbooks together earlier this year. And it was just kind of, I love working on cookbooks because you get to go to the food shoot, which is an amazing environment. You have, apart from the fact that you get to eat amazing food for like 10 days, you also get to kind of, you have kind of all this huge team of people around you, food stylists, home economists, the chef themselves, the art director, the designers. It's quite an amazing team. So I love working on them. We did have the pandemic slightly affected it because, in that situation, normally you'd all be in there and the chef would be making the food and talking to you about the food and what it means to them and how we can get that across on the page. But a lot of the time people were kind of nervous to dip in and take a forkful of the food, because normally it's a kind of lovely collaborative process. But it was a bit different if someone had stuck their fork in and had a bite of some meatballs, like no one else wanted to go anywhere near it. So it was like one guy knows what it tastes like and knows how to get that across, but everyone else is like, I'm not touching that.
Yeah.
Get away from
Yeah, it kind of kills the communal eating experience.
Yeah.
Dominic, do you have anything exciting that you're working on at the moment?
Not at the moment. I mean, a lot of it is just like in the process of getting approved. So, but most of my stuff is like on my website or on my Instagram. So, I mean, I can't share a screen right now, so that's the only best that I can give you is my website. So.
All right, but you told them where they can find it. Now, do all of you mainly do covers, or Kathleen, you do interiors too, right? Do you all do interiors of the books too, as well as the front and back?
Yeah, I do both.
Yeah, me too.
For me, I had one interior, just like small little like lettering. So that was my first interior, and that was for Queens of the Resistance. It's like a 4 different series books, and that's why I just did like small little lettering pages for certain ones. But that was my first ever time doing an interior, which was cool. But most of the time, it's just covers.
Yeah, and we have a question here. Similar to share something you're excited to be working on now, but it sounds like cookbooks might be some of the popular things. Is there anything outside of cookbooks that you're really psyched to be working on at the moment?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I've taken on a couple of jobs. I wouldn't normally take on stuff that wasn't based in the publishing industry, because I just think, I'm a book designer because I kind of love designing books, and I think that's where my skill lies. But I've started to work with a couple of small independent record labels to design record sleeves recently, which is really exciting because it's just a totally different format. I mean, I hate designing square books. I don't know if either of you guys think the same thing. So it's a funny thing to be designing to a vinyl sleeve, but it's really exciting, and I find it pretty much is the same technically for me as a designer, exactly the same. So it's been really it's been lovely to do that and find confidence in myself in doing that. So yeah.
Quite a big canvas too to work with.
Yeah, really big.
Yeah, I've been doing more audio and ebook for Scribd, which is it's a great platform, and they do original content. So that's kind of fun because a lot of the things I'm doing are short originals. So, they're not, I don't have to read a whole novel, but it's like a lot of them are really topical. So that's been kind of fun because I'm getting to read like almost these kind of New Yorker type articles and coming up with a cover for them. So it's almost less pressure than a full book. Like with an author spending years writing a book, like the cover is really, really important. But when you're just kind of doing something for a shorter piece or an article, I feel like there's a little more flexibility, and it's quick for me in terms of turnaround and also reading and concepting. So I like that. I've done work for the New York Times in the past, like op-ed illustrations, and those are really fast. Like you have a day to you get the article in the morning or an outline of the article, and then you're coming up with an illustration. And then book design is like such a long lead time. So it's nice to have a client that kind of splits the difference there. So that's been fun.
So many projects. Yeah, and I think we're almost at time here, unless my computer's really out of sync with the internet clock. And I think Karen was going to come back at the end. We still have a few more questions here, but I think we're about ready to wrap up at 6:30.
I'm back, but if you want to keep going a little bit, you can. If there's some unanswered question or
Yeah, we have a few more in the queue here if folks want to hang out, and if the panelists are up for a few more, because we did have one who, a person here was interested in the process of presenting a design, which I don't know if that is a short answer, but is there a specific way that you go about showing off your design to a client or author?
I like to walk people through. I mean, it depends on the client. So for the book publishers and the art directors that I work with, you know, at Penguin Random House or Simon & Schuster, they know how to present. Yeah, so I'll just send them a PDF and they will share it, and they will decide what they want to show and what they won't, and all of that. If I'm working with somebody who's like an independent client, I tend to do Zoom, screen share. I walk them through, I tell them the thinking, you know, I show them the options, and I give a little more explanation of, you know, here is a cover that is type centric. Here's one with the image that, you know, image centric. This is based on that passage in the book. So giving a little more information. And then that's usually the first presentation. And then from there, maybe I'll just send revisions. But I like to kind of walk people through, and if it's kind of a bigger project too, I'll even have a discovery conversation with them at first and kind of like show a mood board and things like that before I even show any design. So it just depends on the client.
I've found recently that I kind of always used to share flat JPEGs of my covers or a flat PDF, but I've been kind of experimenting with sending like 3D mock-ups of books. More of my work, and I think I don't know. I feel like it makes a difference. I feel like houses like to see what a kind of visualization of what it would look like. So I've started to do a lot more of that, and there's the technology out there is amazing for that right now. The kind of smart layer mock-up sites that you can use are quite incredible for that. So that's kind of the way I suppose I've changed my presenting style, but because I'm never in the design meetings, I kind of just send my work and expect, and you know, it goes on without me. I can't exactly speak to exactly how it's being presented to other people.
For me, that process is, I guess, the process of designing is more so with me and my art director constantly meeting to like review, like I'll send him a PDF or like share a screen kind of thing, and we'll talk about like the process and why I did what I did, and you know, stuff like that, and then send them the final, and then they present it themselves in the presentation. So slightly different, but I mean, I'm a junior designer, so I guess things are slightly different when it comes to presenting.
Yeah, and Luke, you mentioned the sort of more 3D-ish mock-ups. Is that something you started doing since we've been more virtual, just to kind of give that extra dimension, or was that something that predated the pandemic?
It kind of predated the pandemic. I did a little bit of packaging design with a few startups last year, and the packaging designers use these 3D mock-up sites a lot to show what their work would look like on a like a, you know, a drinks can or a beer bottle or something like that. And I noticed in that it offered some amazing resources to for the kind of publishing profession as well. So that's why I started using it. And I think it's really useful. Catherine, you were talking about showing 3D layouts of books before. It's great for that too. And I think it shows off the work in a better light.
Yeah, poor Luke frozen there. Back.
Guys, I'm so sorry, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to duck out.
Yeah, we should probably wrap up too. It's a little bit after 6:30, and I'm sure everyone has an evening to move on to. But thank you for me personally as moderator, panelists. You were all amazing and gave me a lot to think about. I'm going to pass it back to Karen here, I guess, to close us out. But again, this was just as a moderator, I learned so much, and I hope the audience did as well. And thank you so much, panelists. Karen, back to you.
Thank you, Jude. And I have to say, you did a fabulous job of moderating. I know there's so many questions and issues, and we probably could go on for quite a while. And Luke, I do appreciate your staying up so very late to be with us today.
No, it's fine.
Thank you to all of the panelists. It really was a great discussion. And for all the participants out there who I cannot see, thank you for joining as well. And please join us for our next program. You can mark your calendars. It will be November 17th. And the program is called Innovation at the Storefront. So we're taking things a bit further down the supply chain. So, so again, thank you all so very much. And have a
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Chief.
Stay safe and sane.
Thanks.
Bye.